I'm Gloria Chavez, mayor from the village of Tijeras and president for the New Mexico Municipal League. Thank you. Thank you. I want to welcome everyone today to our opening session. We've got a really great speaker, and I know you all will be very interested in hearing what she has to say. Before we get started, can everyone please check your cell phones, make sure they're either off or on vibrate, please. So with that, if everyone will please stand up for the presentation of the colors.
Left, face, forward, march.
If everyone will please take a seat now, I will now call this general session to order. We want to give our sincere appreciation to the Atrisco Heritage Academy Marine Corps Junior ROTC Honor Guard for their impassioned presentation of the flags. And to, yeah, let's give them a hand. And we're happy to have two APS high school choirs here who joined forces to sing the inspirational rendition of our national anthem. They are from Highland High School and Albuquerque High School. Thank you so much. It is truly my honor to bring up this next man that is not only a friend, but he runs a big city and does an awesome job. Ladies and gentlemen, our host and my friend, my pleasure to introduce Richard Berry, Mayor from the city of Albuquerque.
Good morning. How's everybody? that did not sound sufficiently caffeinated to me. How's everybody doing? You all right? Mayor Chavez, thank you so much for being here. We've worked together since my days in the state legislature, and she runs a beautiful community and does a great job. And we are just thrilled to have all the leaders from around the state here today. So I want to welcome you, number one, to Albuquerque and to our being renovated convention center. I hope the inconvenience hasn't been too much for you, but we think it's this $20 million renovation is going to really give us an opportunity to host more meetings in a way that we want to host it. And one of the things that we found out when I first got into office was this west side of the convention center was built in the 70s, and it was built in an architectural style called brutalism, and it lived up to its name. But we really wanted to look and feel more like New Mexico and more like Albuquerque, and we think we're getting there. So once again, thank you for putting up with the inconvenience. I had a chance to go to Roswell in, I think, 2010 and Taos in 2011 for the Municipal League. In the last 2 years, I've for one reason or the other, my travel's taken me away from the league. But we are so glad that you are back in Albuquerque, and we're just really pleased to be able to host you. Bill Fulgenetti and I sat down for lunch a couple of weeks ago in Santa Fe, and we started talking about some of the legislative agenda that we're going to have for the city of Albuquerque. And I know that a lot of our interests are shared in common. I spent most of my summer, obviously working like you all did, but we did some vacationing around the state. We were at Navajo doing some water skiing. We were visiting Mayor Calhoun in Red River at Cowboy Evening, spent some time in Angel Fire. We just kind of spent some time in northern New Mexico. And the good news is the country looks good. I hope it looks good in your part of the state. I grew up in a town of about 13,000 people in Nebraska, a farm town. My grandfather was a rancher. My other grandfather was a dairy farmer. And so I spend a lot of my time, windshield time, looking to see how the country is. And it looked a little dry in Chama. I was on a horse in Chama for a couple of days, a couple of weeks ago. It still looks a little dry up in that area. I know you need some rain. But the rest of the places we've been look good. So I hope it looks good in your part of the state. We are very appreciative of the rain. We got 70 hundredths at my house last night here in Albuquerque. So we just feel really blessed to be able to get some of the moisture. I do also want to thank our high school students that are here today. If you are here from APS, would you raise your hand and give us a shout today? Anybody still? Thank you so much. Thanks to the Hornets and the Bulldogs for your beautiful rendition, and to Atrisco for the color guard. Yet last night I got a chance to go to Sandia High School and speak to some of the students there. And in like almost all the mayors around the country, we don't run the school district, and nor do we want to. But I know mayors all over the country want to do what we can to supplement and augment the education that our students are getting. So we have some programs in Albuquerque, the IB program, Running Start for Careers, which is an industry-taught curriculum in our high schools. And these are some of the things that we're trying to do to make our student experience even better. And as I run into our students, and I want our APS students to know this, as I run into our young adults and our young folks within APS, it really makes me feel good about our future as a city, and as a state, and as a nation. We've got some really, really sharp kids. I say kids, my son's a senior in high school this year as well. They're actually young men and young women. But we really appreciate what you're doing. Do good in school. You're our next generation of leadership. We're glad that you would take time today to come down and mix with really the great leadership we have in the state of New Mexico. And many of you I know. I knew you either from the legislature, I know you from the Municipal League, or just from our time as contractors working in different cities around the state. So I know you've traveled a long way to be here, and I know that the Municipal League is going to put on a great meeting for you. I'll end with a couple of comments. I know our staff is here. If you're from the city of Albuquerque and your staff, would you raise your hand if you're here today? We've got a lot of our staff here today. Thank you for coming. As I said at the first Municipal League that I had a chance to go to as mayor, we see ourselves as a member of this organization. We don't, we are the largest city in the state. That and $5 gets you a cup of coffee at Starbucks, I guess. But we really want to make sure that we're teaming. I grew up in a smaller community. Now I'm the mayor of a larger community. Albuquerque sees itself as a partner. We don't in any way, shape, or form think that we're the only folks in the room that have a decent idea. We talk to mayors. I talk to mayors from around the state on a fairly regular basis about different matters. coach us along as a larger city, help us understand what we can do as a larger city to impact what's happening in other communities, large and small, around the state. And we just want to be partners. If we have resources here that we can put forward, whether it's from a public safety standpoint or whether it's from, just whatever it happens to be. If we're doing something here, you'd like to team with us and you may or may not have the resources to do it, don't hesitate to call my office. The number is 768-3000. 505, of course, 768-3000, and just talk to us, and we'd love to partner with you. I know that we've got some common goals and common interest, and I talked to Bill Fulgenetti about some of these things. I know there's a lot of work going on right now with the hold harmless situation. I know there are communities in the state, 7 or 8 communities, that even with the 3/8 added, upside ability, it doesn't get it done. I know there's a lot of work going on in that regard right now. Lou Hoffman and our staff are actually working with Bill to look at the situation. I can tell you the single sales factor is making a big difference for us. We have people in Albuquerque now looking at New Mexico, Rio Rancho, Torrance, Valencia County, and other places for opportunities, and I don't know if it's also happening in other parts of the state. And they just wouldn't be here if we didn't have the single sales apportionment. So that part of it has been wonderful for us. I know there's some challenges out there, and we'll be working with Bill on that. We don't have anything from our standpoint crafted yet, but I know there's work going on there. When we go to the legislature this fall, we're going to be talking about a couple of things. It's no secret that we're in the middle of a process with the Department of Justice here, working on our police reforms. That process is going extremely well. And in fact, our teams are meeting, even today, working out an agreement that we think works both for the community, for the police department. There's other cities around the country that are going through the same process. So we want to make sure that Albuquerque is able to take a leadership position in that and craft something that works well, does what we want it to do, gets our officers home safe at the end of their shift, but also helps us from the standpoint of community policing. That's going on. But what I'm telling my community is there's some other things that we need, and I don't expect everybody in the room to agree on all of these things, but there's a couple things that we need as a community that we'll be pushing hard for in the legislative session. We need return to work for our police officers. We have a 20-year retirement in New Mexico for our police officers. We have one of the richest, I think it's the 3rd or 4th richest pension program in the country, and we're losing a lot of our police officers at age 41, 42, 40, sometimes even 39, because they're in a position where they're doing what's best for themselves and their family, and they retire. We would like to bring some of that maturity back to the front lines, and so we'll have a bill to the legislature that talks about return to work, allowing us to rehire those officers, and we're talking about just police in this case. To come back, work on the front lines, bring some of that maturity back to the front lines, and really add value to the community. Saves us some money on training as well, and we think it's a good solution to get some of the things done that we need to get done here in conjunction with some of the things at the DOJ. I hear a lot of people around the state talking about a shortage of police officers, and I hope that we can, as communities, come together and talk to our legislators about that. We'll be giving you more information, if you'd like, on that. We are also in Albuquerque interested in assisted outpatient treatment for individuals in our community that are in a position where through mental illness, which violence and mental illness don't go together generally, but in the rare conditions that they do, and people have a propensity to do harm to themselves or to others, we would like some kind, we're one of the few states in the country that doesn't have an assisted outpatient treatment situation where we can help individuals when they're in crisis. We'll be looking at it, looking obviously at that as well. And we'll be up there looking for infrastructure help and looking for ways to start some help with our innovation center here. Right next door to the convention center, you'll see the old First Baptist Church site. The University of New Mexico just purchased that. We put $2 million in as a city. Private investor Terry Laudick in the U.S. New Mexico Federal Credit Union has put $3 million in to that particular property. The Fed's put in $1.5 million. The county's putting in $1 million. We're going to try to put a center of entrepreneurial excellence here for commercialization of research and other things. We think it's a good place to do it so we can work from a regional standpoint. So there's a lot of exciting things going on, and we'll talk to you more about that during the conference. But thanks for letting me come and welcome you here today. I hope you had safe travels. We want you to have safe travels home. I'll be around the whole conference, different places back and forth to City Hall. So if you want to chat, I'd certainly love to do that. And once again, thanks for coming to Albuquerque, and have a great meeting. And Mayor, thank you for your leadership, and the entire board for the Municipal League for choosing Albuquerque. Have a great day. We'll see you soon. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Thank you, Mayor Barry. I think we get a different insight having him been a legislator and a mayor, so hopefully we'll get a lot of help in Santa Fe. We want to extend our gratitude to the City of Albuquerque, of course, Mayor Richard Barry, the City Councilors, Chief Administrative Officer, and the Conference Planning Committee. From the City of Albuquerque, we have Cheryl Rain Burunda, Celia Alguero, Rihanna Schroeder. From the Albuquerque Convention Center, Jose Garcia, Marlene Andrade, and Mara Subers. From the Albuquerque Convention and Visitors Bureau, Dale Lockett, Cecilia Padilla Quillian. Thank you so much for assisting the League staff with the conference planning and coordination, and as well for your assistance during the conference. Let's give them a round of applause. Next, I would like to introduce the executive board that I work with. It's been such a pleasure serving with these people, and they're just a great group to be with. First, we have Linda Calhoun, President-elect, Town of Red River. Dave Venable, Vice President, Mayor, Village of Cloudcroft. Richard Cordova, Treasurer, Mayor, Village of Eagle Nest. Mary Holman, Immediate Past President, Trustee, Village of Los Ranchos de Albuquerque. We will formally recognize all of the New Mexico Municipal League board members tomorrow during the general session at 8:30 a.m. Candidates for the New Mexico officers and board of directors are going to be serve on October 1st. The election is tomorrow after the business meeting. Excuse me, it's going to be tomorrow at the afternoon business meeting. For running for president-elect, again, Dave Venable, Mayor of Cloudcroft. Vice President, Richard Cordova, Mayor of Eagle Nest. Treasurer, Cynthia Ann Beddison, Mayor Pro Tem Silver City. And also running for treasurer, Sally Burbidge, Mayor Aztec. Directors at large, these are three two-term positions. Philip Birch, Mayor Artesia. Steve Henderson, Councilor Roswell. Joseph Maestas, Councilor Santa Fe. Before we get to our much anticipated keynote speaker, please indulge me for a few minutes while I do some housekeeping announcements. We encourage you to attend all the educational sessions this afternoon and tomorrow, as well as the resolution committee meeting today and the business meeting tomorrow that will focus on issues for the upcoming 2015 legislature. A big thank you to the Platinum Plus conference sponsors, Molson Corbin and Associates and ConocoPhillips for their generous sponsorships of the bags. Thank you. Thank you to the New Mexico Self-Insured Fund, sponsor of the conference portfolios. Thank you, Ed. Many thanks to our conference sponsors and exhibitors who are listed in our conference program. Make sure to thank them for their support and visit the exhibits, which will enable you to win either an iPad or a Kindle Fire. Participate in the Grow It project game to win an iPad, and also consider entering the Facebook photo contest to qualify to win a cash prize. Enjoy this evening's meet and greet candidates reception and tomorrow night's Route 66 theme night. We strongly recommend you take the bus from in front of the Hyatt to the reception this evening and feel free to dress casually. I know I am. Refer to your conference program for details on all conference activities. Download the program at a glance onto your smartphone by using the QR code displayed in the registration area of the Northwest Exhibit Hall. Also, the clerks are having a silent auction in the exhibit hall. Stop by and place your bid on that. Now let's move on to the main part of our program. I'd like to begin by welcoming all of you, the high school students, teachers, and administrators. Thank you for making the time and taking advantage of this great opportunity to listen to a very inspiring presentation. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker. Some of you already know her quite well as her TED talk presentation motivated you to start your own projects in your schools. We look forward to hearing more about that. For those who may not be familiar with TED Talks, TED is a nonprofit devoted to spreading ideas, usually in the form of short, powerful talks. TED began in 1984 as a conference where technology, entertainment, and design converged, and today almost all topics from science to business global issues in more than 100 languages. Meanwhile, independently run TEDx events help share ideas in communities around the world. Candy Chang is an artist, designer, and urban planner who makes cities more comfortable for people. A senior TED fellow, Ms. Chang is a former art director in the New York Times and a 2011 Tulane Rockefeller Foundation Urban Innovation Fellow. She has exhibited her work at the National Design Triennial at the Cooper Hewitt Design Museum and has created public art commissions for the civic institutes, airports, and creative organizations. She has also been selected as a World Economic Forum Young Global Leader. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving a warm New Mexico welcome to Candy Chang.
Hi. I want to thank Gloria and Colette and Linda and the whole New Mexico Municipal League family for inviting me here today. I grew up in the Midwest and the East Coast, and now I live in New Orleans, but I've taken many road trips across New Mexico through Albuquerque and Santa Fe, Roswell, Las Cruces, Truth or Consequences, Shiprock, and many, many places in between. And I love the landscape out here. It always brings me perspective, so it's really great to be back. So before I get into it, here's a glimpse of some of the projects I've made, ways I've tried to reach out to people in public space to share more ideas, to share more resources, to share more of our stories, and to share more of our aspirations. And all of it is about reimagining the ways our cities can be built and designed, and how our places can better reflect what matters to us as a community and as individuals. So many of you are municipal officials, mayors, councilors, city leaders, administrators. You've dedicated your time to the places that you live and care about. And some of you live in urban areas, and some of you live in rural areas, and I'll address both of those places today. And many of you are students. There are about 400 students here today with us, which is wonderful. So I'd like to talk about the power of our public spaces and online tools to help us reflect on our communities. And I'll share some projects that I think might be of interest to you. And I also want to talk about the power of our public spaces to help us reflect on ourselves, the value of contemplative public spaces to improve our mental health and help us make sense of our lives together. And for the students out there, I'll talk a little bit about my path and how I got to be where I am today. So the mythologist, Joseph Campbell, he once said that the privilege of a lifetime is being who you are. And we can spend our whole lives trying to figure this out. I think to be true to yourself, you need to take the time to step back and pause and be quiet and reflect as you continue to grow and change. You know, every experience is a chance for you to change your perspective. So I want to start by sharing a story about a person who has inspired me. It's about how an experience completely changed his perspective, and it's a lesson on where good ideas come from. So this is a true story about a man named Joseph Paxton, who was a gardener in the 1800s, and the first person in England to grow the giant water lily plant. And the giant water lily is the biggest flowering plant in the world and can grow up to 8 feet in diameter. And it has a special cross-ribbed structure that gives it a really rigid form. And this made Joseph wonder how strong it really was. So he put his child on it, and it still floated. But he didn't stop there. He somehow found other people's children and loaded them onto the lily pad too, and discovered it could support a whopping 5 kids. So when he realized just how strong the lily pad was, he wondered, what if this structure could be applied to other things? So he used the same structure to create experimental greenhouses, and then he made this. The Crystal Palace, this gigantic cast iron and glass building in London for the Great Exhibition of 1851. And more than, 14 or 15,000 people came together in this space to celebrate the latest technology during the Industrial Revolution. So Joseph translated the structure of the giant water lily plant into this gigantic building, and he was knighted for his work. So I like this story a lot because I aspire to have the openness of mind where the strength of a leaf can lead you to reimagine the way we build our buildings. It's because he was curious and he tried things out and he kept an open mind. And that's the core of how good ideas develop. Curiosity and experimenting and allowing your many life experiences to influence you for the rest of your life. And because of that attitude, Joseph the gardener also became Joseph the architect, which makes me think about the idea of disciplines. We can make disciplines as small or as big as we like. Disciplines are just one way to categorize fields of study and interest. There are many spaces between traditional disciplines, and no one says you can't go outside of the lines. So it seems only natural that we make our own disciplines out of the bits and pieces that we're interested in. That each and every one of us has a unique discipline that's made up of our life experiences and personal interests and unique combination of perspectives, the sum of all the moments of our lives. And this continues to change as we grow and change. So I studied architecture and graphic design and urban planning. And while it looks like a simple and deliberate triad, it's actually been a really meandering journey. And over time, bits and pieces of these disciplines and my personal interests have kind of come together to inform the things that I do today. So when I finished college at the University of Michigan, I moved to New York City, and I lived about 4 blocks from this building, 11 Spring Street, which was this big informal hub for street art. And I think it made a big difference in how I perceived my part in public space. It made me feel like public space wasn't this pristine, sterile space that I couldn't touch. It made me feel like it was this informal, colorful place where I could add to the mix too. And so I did. I made street art, and my friends and I started a design firm and record label together. And then I worked at the New York Times as a designer, laying out the newspaper. And during this time, I happened to catch an episode of New York, a documentary film by Rick Burns. And I learned about master planner Robert Moses, who planned to bulldoze a big strip of lower Manhattan to make way for a 10-lane highway. And I learned about journalist turned activist Jane Jacobs, who got her community so worked up that in 1962, they prevented this 10-lane highway from being built. And it still shocks me to think about how different New York would be today if that highway had happened. Because the slums that Moses tried to clear out are now some of the greatest neighborhoods. It's Soho, the West Village, the East Village, Chinatown, the Lower East Side. All of those neighborhoods would have been destroyed if this highway had happened. And it made me think about all the cities that could have been, and then all the cities we have today, depending on who gets involved. And that's when I decided to study urban planning at Columbia University. And during that time, I started to realize there was a lot of information important to communities that never really made it down to the ground. So I sought out grants and opportunities to work with nonprofits and community groups and design for things that I believed in. One of my inspirations during this time was Charles and Ray Eames, who made chairs and houses and films, and this exhibit called Mathematica in 1961. And they made the typically dry topic of math into something really fun and engaging. And in a related way, I wanted to make city information more accessible and engaging. So I worked with community groups to improve citizens' access to their rights and resources. So I worked with the Street Vendor Project and the Center for Urban Pedagogy to design a guide for street vendors in New York City that illustrates the most commonly violated rules so vendors can make an honest living and stop paying fines. I worked with the advocacy group Tenants and Neighbors to make renters' rights more accessible through a deck of flashcards. Through Global Studio, I worked with recovering drug addicts in Vancouver to improve access to resources. And I worked with a community group in Johannesburg to install chalkboards in public space to improve local communication tools. And through these experiences, I learned the value of doing what you can with what you have. I learned the value of being scrappy. And I also started to see the universal limitations that residents have in sharing information with one another. We have more and more tools to reach out across the world, but it's still hard to reach out to everybody in your entire neighborhood. And I started to think of communication tools as a kind of infrastructure system, just like roads and sewers and electricity. They need to be thoughtfully designed and built in order for a place to function well. And they're needed now because our communities have changed. Over the course of history, communities have transformed from like densely knit village-like local groups into these sparsely knit, spatially dispersed social networks. And this has led to a whole new world of easy connections at the global scale. But with this shift, we've lost a valuable resource along the way. People in one community all share common spaces, and within these spaces we share overlapping interests in the same information. Residents are full of local knowledge and experiences that could help us improve our communities and ourselves. But as a whole, we don't know as many neighbors as we used to, and we don't bump into every neighbor, especially in rural areas. So a lot of wisdom never gets passed on. But we do share the same public spaces and communal hubs, sidewalks and parks and grocery stores and gas stations. And how can those public spaces serve us better? As I was making street art, I started to look more closely at the messages in public space, ways that people are trying to reach out to a whole neighborhood. You see flyers spread throughout the interstitial spaces of the city, and things like lampposts have become like unofficial billboards for local communication. During this time, I learned about William White and his documentary, The Social Life of Small Urban Spaces. And if you haven't seen it, you should totally watch it. It's free on Vimeo. In the 1970s, he recorded New Yorkers in plazas, kind of like a scientist on safari, and to better understand why some public spaces work better than others. And with modesty and humor and love, he shows that how we can make more compassionate places for people just through careful observation. And I thought more about the ways that I lived and looked at how people were trying to communicate. And I thought about the potential of the flyer, the sort of latent message in public space left for all to see and respond to if they liked. And I started documenting flyers in different neighborhoods across New York and started to classify them into different categories and compare them to online forums. You know, since the earliest days, the internet was considered a kind of public space. And Lee Felsenstein, one of the founders of the personal computer, he advocated using the internet as to restore an information commons. And this has come true in many ways, and it made me wonder how our physical public spaces can continue to advance and become an information commons as well. The more that residents can come together and self-organize, the more that we can share wisdom and make our places more ours. And if our places were designed differently and we were given the opportunity, we have more to share with one another. So I started to experiment. I wondered what would happen if we had interactive prompts in public space. And they all came from questions I have. And those questions started out really practical, like this one from about 7 years ago. I wanted to know how much my neighbors pay for their apartments. I think many of us wonder how much our neighbors pay for their places, but it can be a rude question to ask. So as part of this Windows Brooklyn exhibit, I posted these I covered a storefront window with Post-it notes stamped with these specific fill-in-the-blank forms. So people could share information about their housing costs. And by the end of the week, this window was transformed into this useful collection of housing information that was made by and relevant to the community. And I turned the data into graphs of locations and ranges of rent and found out it was such a fun and easy way to learn more from my neighbors and learn more about how our community has changed over time. And this got me thinking about a lot of other things we might be able to share in public. So I live in New Orleans now, and I love it. I worked on a criminal justice project there in 2005, 2006, and fell in love with the city, and now I feel like it's going to be a home base for life. Here's a shot of downtown. Just east of the French Quarter is the Marigny and the Bywater where I live, and it's full of colorful shotgun houses that are so damn cute, I want to like pet them. And here's my neighborhood sign, hand-painted with the levee below and like a million stars above. And I think it's funny how so many people view New Orleans as this big party city, because to me it's such a sanctuary. It's a place for me to help me slow down and restore perspective and do some of my best thinking. Here's a pocket park down the street from me. Here's our neighborhood pool, which is clothing optional. And here's the neighborhood parade where people, they proudly tug around a procession of these little shoebox-sized floats with a full-on like marching band on either end. So I love New Orleans. I think it's really easy to keep dreaming when you're awake, because there's always something odd and wonderful happening on the streets. Now, I think it's also interesting to see how many hybrid businesses there are in my neighborhood. There's businesses serving multiple needs. So this place is a restaurant slash bar slash liquor store slash laundromat. There's a pet supply store slash art supply store. There is a Mardi Gras like party supply store that's doubled as a grocery after the main one closed after Katrina. And now it's become the main grocery with a little bit of party supply on the second floor. But there are also many vacant storefronts, and I think many of us walk or drive by like underutilized areas of our cities and have opinions of what we like to see in these places. You know, who knows a place better than the people who live and work there? You know, we know what would make our communities more comfortable and more complete and more ours. What do we want? So I made these fill-in-the-blank stickers as a kind of crude tool and experiment, a kind of love child of street art and urban planning, to see what would happen if we could easily say what we want where we want it. And they're made of vinyl, so they can be easily removed without damaging property. And I put boxes of free stickers in businesses around the city. And I posted grids of blank stickers on vacant buildings all across New Orleans, so I had control of documenting the responses. And I stuck a permanent marker next to each grid using poster putty, so anyone walking by could easily fill one out. And I designed in the style of the "Hello, my name is" sticker, so hopefully more people walking by would immediately know that they were welcome to write on them. And it's a fun play on the building trying to figure out its identity. So it was all a big experiment. I'd start out by posting a grid of 20 stickers, and I'd come back a few days later to take pictures, and if they're all filled out, I would add more stickers. And this kept on happening until many of these places had over 100 stickers on them. And I was amazed to see the range of thoughtful responses, from a butcher shop to a community garden, from a place to buy flowers for my baby, to heaven. You know, it's a fun, low-barrier tool to provide civic input on-site, and the responses, they reflect the hopes and dreams and colorful imaginations across different communities. You know, I started using cheap tools like this because I was just trying to do what I could with what I had, and only later did I realize that they had a lot of other benefits to it. It's accessible to everyone. It's anonymous, so you can open up in ways you might not have otherwise. It doesn't put you on the spot, so it allows shyer people like me to share just as much with their community. And the handwritten responses, they reveal a lot of personality that often gets lost with digital tools. So some people want better infrastructure like roads properly paved, sidewalks repaired, and bike racks installed. And some people want better food, like an affordable farmer's market, a Chinese restaurant, a donut/flower shop, another good hybrid idea, or an entire building covered in bacon. I love the range of responses from the functional to the poetic. This is one of my favorites. I wish this was full of nymphomaniacs with PhDs, sexy and smart. Some people dream of making it their own, like Keon and Kaylin's seafood place, my art gallery, my produce market and cafe. And some people dream of making it together. I love this one. Someone wrote, "I wish this was a bakery." And someone else wrote, "If you can get the financing, I will do the baking." And that leads to the bigger question. You know, what if residents had better tools to come together and shape the future of their communities? You know, what if we want the same thing? What if we could prove there was a strong enough customer base for a new business or service to open? How can people take ideas further? So my friends Dan and T. Parham and I, we teamed up and took this idea a few steps further and created a tool called Neighborland. A tool to help people come together over the places that they care about. And thanks to a grant from Tulane University and the Rockefeller Foundation, we started it in New Orleans in 2011, and now it's available everywhere in the US. You can say what you want in your city or town. You can also see what other people want and click Me Too. So that one neighbor who wants the ability to recycle glass can turn into 10, 20, 30, and beyond. And there's a page for each idea where people can share more. So people who want the same thing can come together, share local knowledge, resources, petitions, upcoming events, and beyond. So if you scroll down this page, you know, someone shared information on a new local startup that's recycling glass, and an organization shared information on their pilot program and the legal process to make recycling happen at the state level. So it's local knowledge in one easy place, and people can get involved on their own time. Now, people have turned ideas into a reality on Neighborland, like a pop-up night market that's become a regular thing, improved bike signage, more food truck licenses, and petitions that have actually changed policies. And this project is really inspired by our questions, and there are a lot of passionate organizations out there doing their very best to improve their communities. But we've been to a lot of community meetings where the voice of the community ends up being the handful of people who can make it to the meeting or the loudest person. And I think this is especially a challenge in rural areas where it's not so easy for everybody to meet together. And that made us wonder, how can people get involved over time, and how can the quiet people share just as much as the loud ones? So Neighborland helps organizations reach out to their communities and ask any question that they want, like what could make the east side of our town even better? How can we make our area a lifelong community? Or how can we make this plaza a better place? And people can answer directly on the online page, and when you scroll down, you can see everyone's answers. In this case, 274 people want pop-up music concerts, 257 people want a pop-up film festival, people want to see children playing, people want more trees and grass, and the ideas go on. And you can click Me Too or add a new idea, and if you click on one of these ideas, you can see more information, and people can share updates and news and local knowledge and beyond. In this case, this question was posed by a nonprofit organization called San Francisco Beautiful. And they're now implementing some of the most popular ideas that people have shared and are keeping people posted on upcoming projects. And Neighborland is always about real places. So to help reach all the people who care about that place, you can also pair your online question with public installations. So organizations can create these giant signs in public space at events or hubs of activity to reach everyone who cares about that place, to make this process more collaborative, more inclusive, and more fun. And we've experimented with a mixture of digital tools too to gather feedback in public space. So for instance, this real estate developer in downtown New Orleans used the tool to ask residents what businesses they want in their vacant storefront. And they installed posters on the empty storefront windows that say, what businesses do you want here?